48% of women have suffered abuse online in the gaming space based solely on their gender. When I was 13 years old, I was asked the question many of us born with a uterus are so familiar with on Xbox Live. Are you a squeaker or a girl? After answering that I was a girl, naively, within moments I had a barrage of questions from young men, likely 16 and up based on the memory and the voices I heard. The questions were, what's your bra size? Have you ever sucked a dick? Do you want to be my e-girl? Or how about we play in a private party? There isn't much you can say as a 13-year-old to a bunch of men barraging you with inappropriate questions that you quite frankly never thought anyone would ask you. Well-mannered people didn't talk to you that way, but then again, Xbox Live was anything but well-mannered. So I politely declined answering and asked them to play the game so we could win. I stopped talking as frequently in random lobbies shortly after that. I learned why women keep their mics muted at 13 years old. When I was 16 years old, I started writing freelance for gaming websites. When I was 18 years old, I experienced headhunting for the first time and started writing for a website that needed to break up the sausage factory a bit. They had heard my writing was good and they had read some of it, so they wanted me there. I was told to shove a cactus up my pussy by a colleague. Nobody did anything. When I was 20 years old, I started tanking in World of Warcraft. For those of you unfamiliar, World of Warcraft has a fairly good community in terms of lack of sexism. It still exists, but most guilds have several prominent or active female members on their rosters. I was blamed by my co-tank for being too new to tanking and just a girl trying to play with the big boys. My co-tank, a woman, refused to take fault for her actions proven to her by tools like Warcraft logs. When I was 22 years old, I was told by my new co-tank, this time a man, that I didn't know what I was doing and to please play my class right. Fed up of how I was being treated, I quickly defended myself in front of the entire raid group to prove my point of how much I had researched this class. I wanted to play my class, which was a prot warrior, at that time terrible condition, in my way, and I knew how to. I was continually harassed by my co-tank, received snide comments, and told in angry whispers about everything I had done wrong. It was more than once that we dropped to another Discord voice channel to talk things out. It's funny how, in both those two instances, anytime another raid member was tanking alongside me due to the other tank having real-life commitments, things were smooth sailing. I frequently remember comments like that tank synergy from people who were very experienced at the game. Recently, with this podcast, anytime a clip circulates where it's not very clear that I have boobs, I'm met with an onslaught of angry comments due to my, androgynous dressing. My personal style has never been extremely feminine, and I feel the pressure to dress a certain way the more I spend time doing content creation. If nothing else, to stop the comments that feel the need to make judgment based on my physical appearance alone. But despite having these concrete events in my gaming journey, more and more I've been asking myself the question lately, do I feel safe in the gaming space, or do I simply brush off whatever's directed my way? Do I accept the treatment I've been given because they're just picking my gender as an easy target and they'll be an asshole either way? Video games have long been advertised as a boys' club, but if you look back to even 2008, 40% of gamers were estimated to be women. Women in games isn't a new thing. But women being visible in the gaming space without advocating for more visibility of women in gaming is. If we look back at the 2000s and 2010s, a prominent woman in video games were seemingly there to prove that either the company does employ women and cares, but they really don't, or trying to show young girls and women that you can play video games too. It was just another market to sell to. Heaven forbid, a woman simply wants to work in video games. Ubisoft's team, the Frag dolls, were way ahead of the curve on this matter. Formed in 2004, the group would go on for 11 years to tour gaming conventions, compete both online and offline, and attempt to bring more visibility to women playing games on a competitive level. The group received heavy criticism throughout the years, from both men and women, saying that they were taking advantage of the fact that they were a woman in gaming. They were trying to advance their careers, win tournaments, but most often the criticism was they just stand there and look pretty and can be paid for it. A Kotaku article by Elizabeth Balu in 2019 titled "The Rise and Fall of the Frag Dolls, a group that blazed trails for women in gaming," felt oh so familiar to how I had felt about the Frag dolls. The feeling of, but I don't look or feel like them, all while having the idea of what a girl gamer was in society in partly my head. A lot of the article is an interview from Wilson, one of the former Frag dolls. However, speaking to as many as Balu could, what stuck out most was how aware the Frag dolls were of their perception by the gaming sphere. The idea of making them too sexy, too mean, too competitive, too girly, or too much is a balance almost every woman in the public eye can relate to. It isn't enough to just be an honest version of yourself. You need to be an honest version of yourself while not rocking any boats. And I think there comes a time in every woman's life, and I am speaking from quite a bit of personal experience here, where we just stop caring. When I go into work most days, and I work in the trades, I don't care what my male colleagues think of me. I do not care what my female colleagues think of me. I am there to do a job and to do it well. And I'll do it regardless of my gender. But there is an unfortunate amount that we do have to care about who we're surrounding ourselves with physically and how we have to take care of ourselves. When I was growing up, I had a friend who had a father who was involved in some sort of military organization. And he taught us all how to defend ourselves. Just a young group of women, just very randomly and out of the blue. And I have always carried those tips with me. It is something that I hope most women have heard, but it's the palm to the nose. And unfortunately, if you hit someone hard enough that way, you can break off their nose bone and kill them, basically, and just shove it into their brain, which isn't pleasant and isn't a nice thing to think about, but it is a form of self-defense. It is the 2 chops of the hands down onto the traps right next to your neck. It is pinching the armpits or the inner thighs. It's kicking them in the groin. It's using monkey grabs of the peach from Kung Fu if you have to. It's doing anything to survive. And it was just such a random little blip in my life. And recently, it was shared with me by someone else that when this man was alive, he had figured out that someone in my hometown had been kind of talking inappropriately to the young women, to women around my age. And here was this gentleman who just took it upon himself to teach us all how to defend ourselves. And I have to think about things like that in my head, and I don't do it out of anxiety necessarily, but I do it out of safety. I just recall self-defense to myself ever so often. I've done solo traveling. I've been to countries completely alone in a different time zone and not really knowing anyone in the city. And if something were to happen, you're kind of on your own in a sense, especially if you're in a country where you really do not speak the language. Google Translate is there, but it only gets you so far. And so to have this sort of idea of not rocking the boat, of a toned down version of yourself, both within your job, within your life, within games, within hobbies, within your passion. Even the way that I talk right now, it's not so much a toned down version of myself, but it is sort of like a radio speak version of myself. It's a nicer version. You can go see on my streams if you want to catch the real version, but I can get pretty loud and I can be pretty brash, and that's just who I am. But this is a nice way of speaking. This is a toned down way of speaking. This is an accepting way of speaking. And going back sort of, I've gone way off script here and I apologize, but going back sort of to this idea of dressing a certain way, not dressing super femininely, there was a time in my life where I was dressing quite a bit softer, and I dress in a more welcoming manner because I know I am an intimidating person. I am not a small lady, and I do not carry myself like a small lady. I am there to take up space, and I'm going to take up as much space as I want to. I do not care who judges me for it. I want to be comfortable in life, not making myself tiny and small in every little chair. If I want to, put my arms back, if I want to cross my legs, if I want to spread my legs like a man, I'm going to. But with the dissolution of Frag dolls in 2015, the gaming industry is left without a group advocating so passionately for the inclusion of women in competitive gaming and in gaming development roles. The Frag dolls didn't just help the image of women playing games, they got women jobs and got them on the right track. The connections they made via Ubisoft, the conventions, and the tournaments they attended would help the members get more permanent work in the gaming industry. According to the Kotaku article, the dissolution of Frag dolls was more an internal politics game at Ubisoft than anything. The Frag dolls can rest easy knowing they helped to make great strides in the gaming industry, but the unfortunate thing is they could have done so much more in the last decade if they had still got the funding from Ubisoft that they needed to continue. And looking at how the pay structure works, they would have made leaps and bounds if they had been salaried employees who were able to focus solely on the growth of women and support for women in gaming, versus getting odd jobs and other work to fill the pay gap that they had. The gaming industry is under more pressure than ever before to keep the new roster of female gamers, and it's looking more and more difficult to keep them on board. Gaming is a wonderful hobby for most, and for those that started during the pandemics, it's likely a solo activity or a wind down time, but for a lot of us, it has social aspects to it that keep us hooked for so many years. Discord servers where you can parallel play with friends, tournaments in real life, and online lobbies playing games with strangers from all over the globe. And before comments start, which I know they will, it's not about women needing to lift women up. Not anymore, not in circumstances like this. There was a wonderful TikTok audio that went around, and it was a woman apologizing to famous women that they had judged badly, hurt, or spread lies about. Ganged up on, that type of thing. I cannot find this audio again for the life of me because I don't think it picked up traction too much. It was kind of just one of those ships passing in the night for my algorithm. It went something like, I'm sorry for judging Miley Cyrus. I'm sorry for calling Britney Spears crazy. I'm sorry for how many times I talked about Taylor Swift's relationships. The point of the audio was not to tell anyone else off, but it was taking accountability that women have in the past beat down other women because it was the cool thing to do, or the thing that in some circumstances kept us safe, just agreeing with the crowd. When 48% of women are experiencing gender-based hate in a hobby like video games, it should not be up to us to protect ourselves anymore. It is up to the random men in our lobbies to step up. It is up to the companies to step up, and to the other ladies out there, the only thing we gotta keep doing is lifting each other up in the way that we are becoming so good at. Keep going. Don't give in to the hate. It's easy to make, but it's not good. It was a few years ago now that I told my sister I'm only gassing people up from now on. What I meant by that was pretty simple. If someone I knew posted something on Instagram, I was going to leave the nicest comment I could think of. Respond to stories, make comments on Facebook posts, retweet things on Twitter, anything I could do to support people I knew, but mostly I wanted to support the women I knew, and I still want to do this. As a kind of funny side note, I learned the hard way that if you respond to a single person's Instagram story too many times, they might think that you're interested. I now limit how often I respond to Instagram stories. Through this process of supporting other women, the algorithms picked up that I liked seeing content from other women and started pushing more my way. I was never mad about this, but I've noticed something since 2021 or maybe 2022. There are a lot more women content creators in the competitive space of gaming than there used to be, or at least women being more visible within competitive spaces. Clips that make rounds regarding sexism are mostly men telling them to go make a sandwich, go back to the kitchen, clean the toilet, the usual and frankly overused insults. We've all heard them a bunch of times. It's people being an ass and trying to get a teammate or an opponent to tilt for fun, but it just feels like that. Someone being an asshole. The funny part about these clips and why they get so much traction is that the woman player usually gives them a good old whooping by the end of the match. They'd probably be mean to you no matter your gender or your race, but they see those as easy targets and try to get a rise out of you. This isn't to defend the behavior or to say it's right, but I think they just want to feel empowered in their day and do so by taking it out on someone else. The thing is, on occasion, you meet the ones that are a real treat. You meet men that threaten to track you down, to rape you, to choke you, to stalk you, and in extreme cases, to kill you. This is not normal behavior, and it's punishable within most games, but because of the way that reporting systems often work in online games, you don't want to quit the game with a harasser present, as you could get an AFK penalty. And this exact situation happened to Taylor Morgan, a Valorant player. The clip that Taylor Morgan posted on Twitter and social media is quite graphic. For any woman who has spent time in a hostile environment like this Valorant lobby, you will feel familiar with these threats. Do you know what rape feels like? Do you want to know? It's not rape if I enjoy it. After shutting the game down via Task Manager, Taylor Morgan ended the stream and wound up with an AFK offense from Riot. The question still remains, is gaming a safe space for women? For almost 50% of the gaming population, can you honestly say that they would feel safe in a random lobby, talking on their mic? That these companies care about them, want to protect the players, and deal with reports like this in an effective and timely manner? I don't think I can.